presentation because the screen will be too small, so I'll just talk it through. And I think the easiest way to do it will be do any questions at the end, if you're happy with that, because obviously there's slightly more, what's the word, admin involved with people getting up. So thank you very much for inviting me to your meeting. I really appreciate it. So my name's Ruth. I am Area Coordinator for the Midlands for Arthritis Action. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about what we do as a charity, and then also talk to you a little bit about self-management for arthritis. And the kind of purpose of this really is, if you have arthritis yourself, hopefully some of the information will be helpful, but also there are a lot of people living with arthritis, and the more we know, the more we can support our friends, our families, our neighbours, whoever it is we know, and help them feel more comfortable, and help them feel, less self-conscious about their condition, and just more helpful day to day. So even if you don't have the condition yourself, hopefully there'll be some helpful information, and it will be interesting. So as a charity, Arthritis Action has been around for about 75 years. We are UK wide. And like I said, I look after our bits and bobs in the Midlands. We give hands-on practical advice to help people combat the pain of arthritis. And our aim is to help people who have any form of arthritis gain the knowledge and the confidence to manage their condition themselves and live life to the full, whatever that means for you. We know that, everyone's hobbies are different, everyone's lives look different, but it's about finding the self-management that works for you. So I also want to talk a little bit about the impact of arthritis initially to kind of set the scene. So about 1 in 6 people in the UK are currently living with some form of arthritis, which is, a huge number. And it means that the likelihood is that some of yourselves who are listening today are living with it. Obviously, it can have a really big a difference on people's different lives, depending on how severe it is, on pain levels, mobility levels, all those other things. But in the main, arthritis causes swelling, pain, and stiffness in the joints. I will do my usual question, actually. So can I take numbers for how many types of arthritis you think there are? You have to shout so I can hear.
4.
4? Any advance on 4? I heard a 10 there.
20.
Heard a 20. Any advance on 20, or are we sticking about there? Great, so we'll stick with that. So times it by 10 and you're about right. So there are about 200 different forms of arthritis. And the reason that I think it's really important to mention that is because each one of those different forms of arthritis is a slightly different condition, has a slightly different way of being treated. And so that treatment, that self-management might look slightly different depending on what condition somebody has. So there are the kind of more common ones that people have probably heard of. So osteoarthritis is the one that nearly everyone has heard of. More common in people over 45, although you can get it at a younger age and you're not guaranteed to get it. And then there are inflammatory forms of arthritis, which are autoimmune conditions, things like rheumatoid arthritis, psoriatic arthritis. You have things like gout, which is classed as arthritis because it causes the swelling and pain in your joints, and a whole other bunch which I won't list because it would take this whole session. But like I said, it's really important to know that they are different conditions because some of them have very different treatments, whether that's medication or other bits and bobs. So I'll be talking in general about the kind of the things that are helpful for all forms of arthritis. And the whole point about self-management, which is, what I'm going to be talking about a little bit, is that it can reduce the impact of arthritis on your day-to-day life. And when we talk about self-management, it's not about it's not replacing medical intervention. It's to have alongside whatever medical support you have as well. So that support side is part of self-management, whether that is seeing your GP, whether that is seeing a rheumatologist, talking to an occupational therapist, a physiotherapist, a podiatrist, whatever it is that you have supporting, it's also about all the things you can be doing the rest of the time when you're not speaking to somebody who's a medical practitioner. So we kind of split self-management down a little bit. Have you got me up on a big screen rather than a little one? Can you see?
Yes, we don't want a big screen.
Yeah. If you can give me screen sharing permissions, I've got a really nice graphic I can put up for this bit. I think, Janet, you're currently the host, so you'll need to make me give me screen sharing or make me co-host, and then I'll be able to share my screen. No problem, I'll carry on without, that's fine. If you're host, Kevin, the top 3 dots on my picture, if you click on those, it should give the option to make co-host.
I can't see 3 dots.
You kind of hover over.
You can share the screen.
Yeah.
Oh, there we go. Thanks, Janet. That's fantastic.
Oof.
Brilliant. Lovely stuff. And you all see that? Lovely. So when we talk about self-management, we kind of break it down into the physical aspect of things and then the mental aspect. There's obviously a lot of overlap between the two, but this just makes it easier to kind of conceptualize where I kind of give you the overview. So when it comes to the physical aspects of self-management for arthritis, I'll touch on a couple of the main ones. And then I'll go into a little bit more detail in a second. So we have things like healthy eating, we have weight management, we have exercise, keeping moving, whatever that means for you. And we have clinical support, and that means something like a physiotherapist, an osteopath, you might see an acupuncturist, a chiropractor. I've already mentioned occupational therapists and podiatrists. And then when it comes to the mental aspects, it's really easy to forget those, but pain is really stressful, really tiring, really upsetting. If you are experiencing chronic pain, which a lot of people who have arthritis do, you are more likely to experience anxiety and depression, for example. So it's really important to talk about the mental side of things as well. So we talk about things like dealing with the emotions that come with, coping with a long-term condition, improving communication, whether that's with the medical practitioners that you're seeing on a regular basis or with friends and family. Can be really difficult to explain to somebody the nature of being in pain, but also the nature of something like, say, rheumatoid arthritis, where one day you might feel totally fine and the next day you're having a flare and actually you're in a lot of pain, a lot of reduced mobility. That difference can be really difficult to explain to people. So we talk a lot about how you can talk with people and help them understand. We talk a lot about distraction techniques, which can be really useful for distracting from pain. We talk about positive thinking and target setting and things like pacing. So we'll go into pacing a little bit more later because it's one of the top things that is particularly helpful for people. So I've kind of already said, but because there's so many different types of arthritis, it's really important to say that with self-management, it's not about a one-size-fits-all situation. So it very much depends on what type of arthritis you have, how severe the pain is, what kind of mobility restrictions you have, but also what you do day to day. If you are working full time, you'll have very different self-management needs from somebody who is retired, for example, or if you've got caring responsibilities, if you've got children, if you've got a lot of hobbies, or if you've got other things that you need to consider. Equally, if you've got a lot of disposable income, you might have more access to some of the self-management options, things that are paid for, like seeing a private physio, for example. Whereas if you don't have that disposable income, you might need to look for different forms of self-management that are accessible to you. So self-management is incredibly personal. If you think of it as like a toolbox, it's when we talk about self-management, it's all about knowing what all the tools in the toolbox are, so that when you need that tool, it's there and you know how to use it. You might not need all of them at the same time, might not need all of them forever. We've all been dealing with an incredibly difficult situation over the last year and a half, and it's made a real difference. It's changed the way people have managed their arthritis. It's changed the way people have felt about their arthritis. We know that swimming pools in particular have been really, really missed. You know, a lot of people relied on pools for their way of keeping active in a way that supported their joints. And there's not really a way of doing that at home, unless, you know, in a very, very, very small number of cases. So yeah, it's important to note as well that obviously the pandemic has had a real impact on this, and also the isolation that's come alongside it as well. So hang on, let me just close this down so I can see where I'm at my end. So I'm going to go into a couple more bits and in a little bit more detail, because these are the ones we get the most questions about. So one of the important things to know about Arthritis Action is we try and talk about things from a research-based, a fact-based perspective. So, for example, we have a dietitian that works for the charity who does all our dietary advice. Our exercise lead is an osteopath. Our membership director is a clinical hypnotherapist. We have a consultant rheumatologist who works for the charity a few days a week. So the information that we give out is credible, it's accurate, and it's based on research. So when it comes to something like diet and arthritis, Dr. Google has an awful lot to say. And if, for example, you're newly diagnosed or you're looking for some support, you know, and it's something that people are interested in, Google gives you 13 million results if you type in diet and arthritis. And a lot of that information is conflicting. A lot of that information it's just really confusing. It's hard to know what's right, what's wrong. And often it's telling you to cut out huge food groups. There is research into whether food is good or bad for arthritis, all those kind of things. And the overarching message is there is not one particular food that's going to make your arthritis worse. There's not one particular food that will make your arthritis better. The key message is about eating a healthy, balanced diet, all the things we know we should be doing, loads of fruit and veg, fibre, all that stuff that we know is good for us, and sticking to a healthy weight, whatever that means for you. It's not the most exciting message, but that is what the overwhelming message is. And you know, things like appropriate portion sizes can be helpful for weight management, but also it's very tricky if your mobility is limited. One of the other things that comes up a lot is exercise and arthritis. And exercise obviously sounds like a very formal word, but I'm going to kind of use the phrase keeping moving instead, because actually that kind of more accurately represents all of the things we do that are moving, that are helping our joints. And the reason that that keeping moving and strengthening our muscles is so important for arthritis is because the more we strengthen the muscles around the affected joint, the more it supports that joint itself, so it can reduce pain. The endorphins that are produced from exercise are a natural painkiller. They make you feel better. Where possible, and again, COVID has impacted this, the socialization that you get from exercising with other people, if that's how you exercise, whether that's a group class or swimming with a friend, going for a walk, you know, going down to the allotment, all of those things are the reasons why keeping moving is so important and so good. And we have seen a lot of people over the last year and a half who have become much less active. And it becomes really tricky because you then increase your pain, your muscles weaken, which makes you want to exercise less because you're in pain. But even if it's just a little bit of stretching, even if it is just a 5-minute walk down the road and back again, 5 minutes is better than nothing. 1 minute is better than nothing. And the more you keep moving, the better it is. It doesn't have to be vigorous. I'm not saying you have to go and pump iron or run a marathon. Like I said, gardening's fantastic, housework, anything that keeps you moving. And we do have resources as well. So I'll flick them up for you so you can see if you are interested in getting a little bit more active, if it's something that you're but don't quite know where to start. We've got all of these exercises which are designed for people living with arthritis. They've been designed by an osteopath. You don't have to do them at that speed, but we have a range of exercises for different areas of the body. And what's great about them is they're all chair-based. You can do them wherever. You don't need any kit or any equipment for them. And for example, you could do them during an ad break while you're watching TV. So you could pick an exercise, see how many you can do, and then do them a couple of times a week. Also, when you're brushing your teeth or when you're boiling the kettle, another little tiny periods of time where actually you've got a couple of minutes, you could pick one of these and see how many you could do. But yeah, they are quite fast, so you don't have to start at that speed. It's all about taking it at the speed that's right for you. Let me stop that, because otherwise you're just going to be, I can see your eyes going across the screen. Fantastic. And you know, exercise is also about finding what you enjoy, because if you don't enjoy it, if it feels like a chore, you're not going to want to do it. There's no point forcing yourself to go for a swim if you hate swimming. But if you love gardening, do more gardening. That's great. You know, we've got people who come to our groups who love their allotments. I love my allotment. It's the best way of, you know, you don't notice that you've been working so hard until you're sweaty and you've been carrying water around and lugging potatoes, or that kind of thing. But housework is equally, you know, just as good at keeping moving. At this point, I also really want to talk about pacing, because actually it's something that's really helpful for everybody, even if you don't have arthritis. But it's particularly helpful if you have arthritis. So if, for example, you wake up on a Monday, it's grey, it's a bit miserable, your pain levels are really high, you're feeling really stiff, you think, actually, I can't face doing all those things I had to do today. I just need to, whatever it is that makes you feel better on a bad day, whether that's staying in bed, whether that's getting on the sofa, hot water bottle, cup of tea, whatever it is that you need on that day, you just know, actually, today's a bit of a write-off. And then on Tuesday, you wake up and you think, well, actually, I feel better today. Sun's out, my pain levels are lower. So I'm going to do everything I didn't get around to doing yesterday because I felt terrible, and all the things I need to do today. And you get to about 3 o'clock in the afternoon and you think, well, I probably should stop, but I'm just going to push through because I've done it all and I've finished it all. And then the next morning you wake up and you feel awful because you've pushed yourself too far and haven't rested properly. I'm seeing a couple of nods of recognition there. You get into this really kind of terrible cycle where the highs are really high, so you feel great, you do loads, but then the lows are really low because you've done too much, so you feel awful the next day. And pacing is about stopping before you have to stop. So the low the next day is less low, so you're slightly evening off, so it's not kind of big peaks and troughs, it's a little bit lower level. It's also about things like prioritizing what is important to do that day. You know, what tasks do you absolutely have to do for your health, for your well-being, for your job, for your caring responsibilities, and doing those either first or at the times that you know you feel better. Some of us are real morning people and wake up in the morning, leap out of bed and feel fantastic. If that's the case, try and get all the stuff you need to get done first thing. Conversely, if you know that actually you don't really get going until 3 o'clock in the afternoon, don't schedule doing some stretching first thing in the morning, because you're not going to want to do it. You're not going to feel in the mood. So it's about kind of having the self-awareness of knowing when is best for you to do things, and prioritizing the things that need to be done. Maybe thinking about like labor saving things like gadgets. You know, if you find opening jars really tiring, don't force yourself to do it all manually. If you get a tool or something that makes it a little bit easier, that's fantastic. You know, lots of people have found that doing their shopping online has freed up that energy to do hobbies instead, or do something they enjoy more. So prioritizing the things that are best for you. There's a really great example which someone in one of my groups gave, which I think just sums it up perfectly. And she said that she really struggled with cleaning because in her mind, hoovering had always been one task. And she had a kind of relatively standard 2 up, 2 down house. And she couldn't make herself stop, but every day she felt awful after she did the hoovering. So the day after, she'd always feel awful, but she couldn't make herself stop. So she knew she needed to pace, but she was really struggling to actually do it. And that's quite a common thing we find. So when her hoover broke, she bought a battery operated hoover, which had a maximum battery life of 20 minutes. Even though they were asking, well, it's got quite a short battery life, do you want a longer one? She said, no, I want the short battery life, because then I can only do 20 minutes of hoovering, and then it has to recharge for 12 hours. So I can't do any more. And that helped her to put something in place to help her pace. So there are ways of doing pacing creatively. And it sounds quite simplistic. It sounds almost quite boring and straightforward, but actually pacing is really helpful. People really find it helpful day to day. It's not easy to do because no one can tell you the point at which you should stop. You have to pay attention to how you feel the next day. You need to pay attention to how you feel in your body, how you feel emotionally. But it can really change the way people plan their weeks, the energy levels, all that kind of thing. So it's really, really helpful. I'll talk briefly about kind of the mental health side of things as well, because I think it is really important to mention. And particularly if you don't have arthritis yourself, but you're looking to support a friend or family member or neighbour who does. Mental health is just as important as our physical health. And like I said, you are more likely to experience depression and anxiety if you have a chronic pain condition. It can be really difficult to stay positive when you're in pain, particularly if that pain is every day or really constant. And feelings of isolation are also really common among people who have got arthritis, where people feel like their life is getting smaller, or they're limited, they're not able to do the things they used to. So for example, people who aren't able to walk as far anymore, if the way you used to see your friends was, going for a long walk and then going for a pub lunch afterwards, for example, might just start saying no to those because they know they can't make the walk. And so are also reducing their social contact, that friendship time. So it's, there are ways of going around that. So if, for example, you've got arthritis and you know that you can't make that walk, if you know places nearby that have either benches in opportune places or a nice cafe halfway around, saying to your friend, actually, I would struggle with that, but could we stop for a coffee halfway? We've also had some really good examples where I've got somebody who comes to my groups who said that she always takes a book in her bag on a walk with her, so that if she needs to stop, she can say, well, you know what, you carry on, I'll wait here on this bench and I'll read. So people don't feel bad about leaving her, because she's like, well, I've got something to do, I'll read my book and then you go on a little bit further as far as you want, and then you come back, pick me up again on the way back. So kind of working ways to carry on including people in social activity. We also have a mental health directory on our website, so people can look up resources in their area to find support for that as well. And it's obviously really important to say that if you are experiencing, low mood, feelings of helplessness, all of those things for more than a few days at a time, go and speak to your GP, because those are things that can be looked at by a GP and can be treated and sorted out as well. So what can we do to help people that have got arthritis? I've kind of talked a lot about self-management, and I've kind of referred to some of the bits and bobs that we've got available. So as I said, we're a charity, so we've got a huge range of things we can support people with. We've got lots of stuff on our website, lots of information. And as I said, the internet can be very overwhelming and have a lot of contradictory information. So we kind of try and provide clear, concise, accurate information that people can view. We've got videos, we've got webinars, we've got fact sheets that you can print off, you can pass on to people that don't have the internet, for example. And we also have, like I said, lots of videos as well, which just sum up different elements of self-management. We've got things like different relaxation types, so things like breathing exercises, progressive muscle relaxation. Hang on, I'm on the wrong slide for my notes. And then we also have things like the exercises I showed you and recipes. And the recipes are designed by our dietitian to be healthy and balanced, but also are produced by a food blogger who has arthritis herself. So it's not going to tell you, you need to cut up a butternut squash from scratch, for example. They're kind of designed with people with arthritis in mind. Our most recent webinar was really interesting. We had a hand specialist come and talk to us specifically about arthritis in the hands, all the things you can be doing and what hand therapists do. So that's available on YouTube or on our website. We also had a really good one called Managing Pain in a Pandemic. And obviously things have started to open back out again, but for people who are isolating or people who are still more nervous about going out, a lot of those suggestions and techniques really still stand. And we've got a wide range of things on there as well. There's also one about arthritis and the vaccine. If you've got arthritis and you're worried about your medication or any kind of things like that, it's really detailed. And that comes from our consultant rheumatologist. We've got the mental health directory. We've also got a physical activity directory. And we also have an e-newsletter that goes out monthly to people. that's kind of our tier of, that's open to everybody. Oh, I forgot the groups. I can't believe I forgot the groups. They're my main thing. So we also run arthritis action groups. And at the moment, those are all still on Zoom online. Have I still got a couple more minutes? Is that all right? Sorry, I can't hear you. If you speak to, is it the laptop or the computer rather than the screen?
Have you got a, can we ask a few questions? Because we've got about 2 or 3 minutes left.
Yeah, of course. Go for it.
Okay. Questions, anybody?
If you're all right to take them and then kind of say them.
Would you send your address or bank details so that we can make a donation, please?
Of course. Thank you so much for your support. We really appreciate it.
We just got a quick word of thanks from our Secretary.
Well, Ruth, thank you so much for that fascinating talk. It's astonishing to think that this common condition has so many forms, but it's also brilliant to know that there are things we can do to prevent it by exercising and so on, as you've told us, and also if we do get afflicted with it, there are ways of managing it. So I'm sure that's something we're all pleased about as we approach a certain age. So thank you very, very much, and best of luck with all your future work for arthritis. Thank you very much indeed.